More poop on sidewalks. Man, there's still so many churches. They might not be as full as before, but even before they weren't all full because there's too many different kinds of universes people want to live in. And of course, we'll never have peace in the world when people on this planet live in a multitude, like thousands of different universes in their heads, which they believe is the right one or real or non-fiction. So, I mean, how do we fix this where we admit we're not that smart, we're not that connected to reality, and we admit that we don't allow our thoughts to be challenged? Because when we don't, they don't improve. So it's the scientific method, right? They need to be debated, challenged, proven, and reviewed, right? And that includes people with PhDs. That includes medical doctors. It includes politicians, kings, dictators, whatever, millionaires, billionaires, Nobel Prize winners who might specialize in one little thing, but not even the entire science their reward is in, but are extremely low standards, doesn't meet Homo sapiens standards with other things they think about or experience or choose as lifestyles or live their lives in what they call relationship, with often no forms of intimacy that they would have the specialized words to describe. So, I mean, we'd have to fix this by the second time there's a pruning in the human brain after the teenage years and entering college. Maybe the second year of college is everybody's got to do 2 or 3 courses where in these courses they learn about the ideologies, paradigms, the beliefs that were proven to be real. Now, of course, these courses will have to evolve as once in a while those things will have to be updated. But really, if a student argues or is, like a church, like if I talk to people in a church and I say I'm not religious, they can't get it. They just think I haven't reached the level of progress they have. They can't get that it's disrespectful if they say God bless you. Because they're imposing themselves onto me, their universe. And no offense, but you're not going to succeed. Like if there's somebody on the planet you're not going to succeed at domesticating or remove the ability to be a critical thinker, or find that my human thinking tools and coping skills are so weak that at some point I would need community that lives in a fictional universe because I'm so distraught at that time, that's not going to happen. I build myself to be very, very strong, and that is no longer possible. Depressions or compromises or cognitive dissonance or incongruences are no longer possible for me. I'd like to find somebody like this. It would mean that I met the elusive Homo sapien. But when people are like this, it proves so much in one statement that to them is just normal to say. And yet it proves so much about how disconnected with both each other and the non-fictional universe we live in is. So if we decide, of course that's not going to happen, we've passed those tipping points, and I can give you examples. You might say, oh no, there's hope. No, I'll give you an example. This is one. This would be one of the solutions. And it relates just to one thing, okay? It doesn't relate to climate change or the concept of land ownership or all sorts of ridiculous things, okay? And climate change, I'm not saying it's ridiculous. I'm saying how we are responding to it if we believe it's true. Even the people that protest, the way they're living their lives is still in denial of it. And of course, they'd be very upset. And most people would think I'm not green for saying that, except I'm really green. My worldview is ecocentric. It's the top of what sentience and sapience can evolve, right? Unless there's relationships with extraterrestrials who tell us about other things happening in the galaxy, for example, or other laws of the universe that can be proven that we've never come close to even thinking about. But that's not the case, and very likely will never be. So it's right now there have to be a decision, let's say at the UN, where the conversations are, oh, we have to stop doing this. And and often the English is mispronounced, and sometimes it's pronounced so bad that it turns into another word that totally changes the meaning of context. But again, that's how much we care, or pretend to care, about the messages from the head of the UN, right? Is if he'd say, be nice to have a woman head of the UN, like the lady in charge of Barbados. Is she the president? It'd be interesting to see, except I think she's religious, but I think that even if she is, she's more capable of others to separate it from church and state. Church and state separation. But I mean, she'd succumb to it at some point because the pressures would be so much greater on her in a way. And it has to be, I mean, we're in the Anthropocene. What politician doesn't, behind closed doors, admit how hard it is to try to implement solutions when everybody's living in different universes and they're certain they're right? And often they started thinking they were manipulative and deceitful, but they believe their own beaver shite so much, let's say in the Conservative Party, that they start to believe they are right. Not just how it all started as a strategy to discredit an opponent, for example, for their own political gain and not for the greater good as public servants. But let's say the UN said, hey, we're now going to, in all institutions that oversee groups of people, is we're going to have to, when it comes to public service or any not-for-profit or whatever that claim to be for services of individuals in communities, is we have to decide we're only going by what has been proven to be real. So religions are out. You know, the advancement of the monetary paradigm is out. I mean, but there is an understanding that at that point that's still the way the flawed, failed proto-civilizations of the world work. But it have to be like this: no more making statements or behaving or believing things that are not proven to be true. And then as these paradigms are forming, then, you know, it would quickly be in countries that have, post-secondary institutions, that hopefully the training in elementary school, middle school, whatever you want to call it, and high schools are at a little bit approaching more human levels, and parenting, what happens at home, approaches a bit more human levels. And we are going to make sure that when youth reach, because they hopefully are developing values of intelligence that are not part of their cultures, they're not part of any culture around the world really, and learning and knowledge, accurate knowledge, and being able to separate. You don't remove fiction, like you still want to read fiction knowing it's fiction, but the Bible, let's say, would have to be more fiction. And it's not that there isn't a few things that are not possibly historically accurate. It's just, it's majoritively fiction, and people go for that part and put it in the extreme with how to interpret it to modern day life. It's ridiculous. Going for a passage and finding a passage that represents what's happening in a person's life today or in the current geopolitics is pretty mentally ill. So when these post-secondary students, thinking, you know, they might come from towns where the education system is so poor that everybody still thinks they succeeded at raising what resembles a human child, is when they reach post-secondary institutions, you know, if they argue in these courses that reaffirm and show how to provide the proofs that this is reality-based ideology or beliefs, and this is how decision-making should happen in case, you know, they become public servants or leaders of some kind, is if we find that they're argumentative or they're confused, this is when, you know, there's referrals to psychotherapy and eventually maybe psychiatry. And it could be, you know, an imbalance of neurotransmitters, but it's very likely the kinds of mental illnesses that I talk about but nobody else wants to is the ones that are shared by the majority and passed on by the majority. And then that person would, maybe if it's very extreme and they don't want to give it up and they make good arguments for how this is their freedom of thought, it's fine, but then you can't be, you know, entering the realms of being a leader of something, or you know, you can think what you want and maybe you can find other people like that, but the thing is you know, you would be disconnected from reality, and it could be that one day before you die, although not very likely, you'd be proven right and the rest wrong. But the thing is it's extremely unlikely. So we'd have to make sure that person doesn't enter, politics, where there are ways to enter politics in the right way at the right time that you're incredibly likely to succeed. So in a way, democracies don't account for that, so they're flawed. So you might say, hey, you're taking that person's freedom away. Well, freedom to what? To devolve their species? There's got to be a limit, people, to what we approve of or not. And that's why there's so much violence, is we haven't had structured, discipline, accountability-based proto-societies that stabilize. So of course this is the big norm now. And when people want to raise kids where they are extremely flawed in this reality connection way, we have to enter policies about that as well. And I'm sorry, but the Anthropocene is real, and it's serious, and it's not just about our species, it's about the concept of life. So it's bigger than us. So yes, we have to say enough is enough. So it's not just religions. If we value intelligence, knowledge, the ability to undergo the maturation process that is worthy of the potential of our brains, then yes, we also must say no more of these drugs that compensate for, the newer generations not learning the life skills they need as social creatures, that are unable to adapt to their own feelings or lives or levels of responsibility to make decisions for themselves. And when you see mental health providers who suffer from this, who put these artificial things in their mouth so often during the day, you can measure that thousands of times, that's not the people that should be guiding others too much. I mean, they might be able to provide a piece of food there and a blanket there, but really it's a big denial about where we really are. I've never met anybody that's not in denial about the human condition in some way or other, and that includes, again, who you would consider to be the best of you. So yeah, I'm sorry, the tipping points were passed. That doesn't mean we don't work on mitigation ventures, and the one I talked about here is huge, but it's just one. And of course that's never going to happen. So you must admit, again, that the best strategy before the natural world imposes this strategy on us is to not keep increasing our numbers, and to possibly try to at least have discussions to develop that one of the most important values is the kinds of intelligence and knowledge that leads to a better connection to the real world and the real interpretation of who we currently are as a species.